Everybody, how you doing? I am Chris Flowers. I'm the executive producer of the Biz Coach Show. We are on with the boss, Eric T. Whitmoyer. He is the founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches. What's going on there, boss?
Doing well, Chris. How about yourself?
Doing all right, man. Easy like Sunday morning, brother. Yeah. Then we're on with Devin Gambino. He is CEO and founder of Lendefied.
How's it going, guys? How we doing today? All right?
Good. How you doing, man?
Doing all right.
All right.
Appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely, man. Nope, absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and read in your bio here, and then Eric's going to take it away, man. So Devin transitioned from commercial real estate to banking, where he spent over a decade funding more than 1,000 businesses and injecting over $100 million into the U.S. economy. He specialized in non-real estate business lending, providing business owners with essential cash for growth. However, he identified a flaw in the industry, a profit-driven transactional approach that neglected the long-term client needs. Frustrated by this, he founded Lendefied, a business lending marketplace focused on providing ongoing support. Lendefied pairs funding with 3 months of complimentary fractional executive services, CFO, CEO, CMO, ensuring small businesses receive both funding and sustained guidance to thrive.
Yeah,
outstanding.
That's exactly right. And we partnered with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank to help make that a reality as well, and bringing the business owners that maybe are startup stage and showing them how to create a pitch deck and how to go after angel investors and what is the right thing and the right way to do it as far as what they're using the money for, how to capitalize on that opportunity. But I appreciate Kevin and what he's done so far for Lendefied, but going forward, I think that investors is one way to borrow money, but borrowing money and then leveraging that money to create more liquidity and just being strategic. I think that's where my company thrives right now, is showing business owners how to get money and then use that money to access additional funds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point, Devin. I appreciate you mentioning that too, because I think that's as I shared with you in our initial conversations, some of my background with the trucking industry and growing my trucking business, I struggled through that aspect, right? I fumbled my way through uncovering how to leverage business credit, how to, didn't know much about it, just kind of figured it out as I went. The more I educated myself, the more I realized, okay, there's certain tools for certain purposes, and using the right tools for the right purposes, there's a lot to be said about that. And unfortunately, similar to what you identified, one of my biggest frustrations about the industry was that those who are providing the solutions have a vested interest in selling you a certain product that may or may not be the right product for your need or your solution. So there's a lot that goes into that. And as a business coach, we're not in the space of lending, but we're in the space of educating and helping our clients identify, what's the right solution, what's the right direction for you, and then partnering with the right people like yourselves at Lendefied and putting our clients in front of somebody who's going to take care of them and lead them through that entire process. So I appreciate that. Great to have you on today. Excited to talk more.
No, I really appreciate it, and the opportunity given me here to kind of have a platform to explain what we do. But I would, I kind of compare it to everyone wants to go electric, right? But I own a gas station, and people come to my lot, and I'm like, yeah, just take this gas and put this in your car. I'll give you a good price on the gas, right? But then now next time you come back, maybe I'll give you the electric. And then you come back and you keep coming back and the electric never comes. But he owns a gas station. So right. Why in the world would he give you a battery in your car?
Great analogy.
It really is, something where think about anybody listening to the show right now. I want everybody listening right now to try and think about the guy that last called you and tried to offer you money over the phone. You were probably getting 100 calls a day. So just think of the last one. They probably were saying that they have the best rates, or they already spoke to an underwriter or whatever have you. That gentleman probably is not even an underwriter. He probably never spoke to an underwriter. It's just a cold call, right? So how do you differentiate that from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about? And that's where, Eric, what you touched on is, what is business credit? How does it impact my business? If you know some of the things like an SPSS score, what is an SPSS score? If you were to say to the last guy that called you on the phone, what is an SPSS score? Have you ever heard of that? If he says, no, I've never heard of that before, you can hang up. because if he's never heard of an SPSS score, he's never done an SBA loan. And so anything he says to you is going to be leading you toward a product that is going to pay him the most money. Now, peek behind the iron curtain for everybody watching this or listening. An SBA loan is the cheapest product that you can borrow interest-wise,
Right.
but it's also the cheapest product for the broker to house. They get paid the least amount. So by saying, do you know what an SPSS score is? If they say no, immediate red flag, because if they say no, it means they're not doing that loan type because they don't make enough money to do it. So that's a red flag right there. So it's those little things like that, the nuances to be able to say, yeah, no, I'll keep talking to you, but I need to validate that you know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah, great point. I know Chris is nodding his head in agreement because he spent 30 years in the banking space and doing lending and things like that. So he can totally appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know, as we talk about, again, I go back to my reference, my experience, the first time I got business credit, I walked into a Wells Fargo and said, I'm going to open up a business account, a business checking account. Right. And they're like, hey, you got some funky stuff going on here.
Who froze? Somebody froze.
So he gives me, he runs my credit, gives me, I got like a 760 FICO. Great. You qualify for $15,000. So I get this business credit card for $15,000. Well, I have 2 LLCs, 2 business accounts. So you know what? Let's go run another one. We get you another business credit card on a different company for a different purpose with another $15,000 credit. But my point is I didn't even know, what I didn't understand the difference of business credit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that, I help clients understand, and they don't understand this, Devin, I'm sure you know this very well. They don't realize that your business credit has very little to do with your personal credit other than getting the initial approval. Outside of that, it operates on its own. It doesn't show or doesn't reflect on your credit score unless you actually default, right? And so it operates over there. Not to mention, and I'm sure I'll let you go into this, but the business credit itself is how it's and you've got a piece here to go over, but how it's even scored, right? It completely different than I tell people, I'm like, it's okay to carry a balance on your business credit. That's not a bad thing, as long as you can keep up with the payments and stay consistent with the payments. And so so many people are trained that this is, my personal credit, I don't want to run up the debt. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have too many cards. I'm like, no. Actually, in business, it's better to have more than you need, because when you need it, they're going to take you to the woodshed, and they're going to take you to it. They're going to charge you an arm and a leg, and they're going to make it super hard for you to get it. So share a little bit with us, and I know you got a riff. That's how riff. Sorry. Want to talk about business credit more specifically, and what makes up the FICO score. Tell us a little bit about how you help a client identify that and what really kind of goes into that.
Yeah, so I can definitely riff on it for a couple minutes, though. That's for sure. What I'm thinking is, I talked to a business owner. Actually, Eric, let's use you. Right, you're a business owner that just got applied for 2 business credit cards. They're on 2 LLCs. What's going to happen is you walked into Wells Fargo, they're going to make you personally guarantee those 2 business cards.
Right.
They'll build business credit, but they're also going to show on your FICO. Now, if you don't go and get an Experian BIN number and a Dun & Bradstreet, and make sure that you have a business address, a business phone line, make sure the business phone line's in the business's name and it's an actual business account through the plan provider like Verizon. Those things allow trade lines in the business's name. They allow you to be verifiable with public status sources. And AI is kind of putting a real pin into your online presence needing to be there, because if it's not, the AI is going to say that it's more like to be fake than an actual loan application. So just to kind of touch on it a little bit, and I don't know if your viewers can see when they're watching your show or if they can just hear, but if they can see, great. You could pull up the slide that I sent. If they can just hear, I'll go over it. A FICO score is made up of how much debt you have available and how much debt are you using. That's really the major use cases, right? As far as how somebody's going to be using their FICO report. I'm going to actually pull up the email that I sent. Did I send that from your email? I did. Can you forward it to me real quick so I can pull it up? talking to my executive assistant, Mia. Mia, why don't you say hi to everybody?
I'm actually pulling it up right now for you. Sorry. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. So 30% of the score is amounts owed. So if I use your analogy, you got two $15,000 credit cards, that's $30,000 of available access. You go use 15, that's 50% utilization. Banks want to see, FICO wants to see 30% or less utilization. So for every 100,000 you have approved, every 10,000 you have approved, don't use more than 3,000. That, as a consumer, simple rule. That rule, as a business owner, next to impossible.
Absolutely.
So now we go and look at 30% of the FICO is made up of debt to income. So that means that right off the bat, if you're a business owner, imagine walking into a test at school and you know you're getting a 70 just because you're walking in and you're this height.
Right.
Just because you're a business owner, you're most likely automatically going to have under a 680 because you're probably using your FICO. But now it goes to a whole other level. How old's your business? Oh, you're a year old? Well, you probably just added a bunch of new credit cards. And now the length of your credit history, because if I have 5 Hot Wheels cars in a 100-year-old collection, they're all 100 years old each. Now I add a 6th and it's brand new from Target. The average age of my collection just tanked.
Right.
The more cards I have, the less of an impact adding one is. People don't think about that. They go, oh, I only have 3 cards. I should probably get one more. Yeah, you should, but not right now because your business is only a year old. Right. So wait till you're over 2 years old. And the, having a credit mix, a lot of companies and brokers and mortgage lenders over the years and car sales companies, when you go to get a car, they say, oh, you don't have a good credit mix. You've never had a car loan before. That's a sales tactic. So the fact that you don't have a wide amount of debts, that's not really the reason your score is low. Figure out why the real reason your score is low. Don't let the guy you're applying with tell you why your credit score is low. Ever. It's just great rule of thumb to follow. But to talk about business credit, this is going to blow a lot of people's minds if they were following along with those numbers. 0% impact. If I have I have a gentleman right now with $1 million in commercial real estate debt, but his business only does $20,000 a month in revenue. His business credit score is perfect. Makes the payment every month on time. How did he get $1 million commercial real estate building in the first place? He was able to do an SBA acquisition startup where he had funds from another business that he sold. But all that comes into play to just express that if you want to keep something on the business, it is possible, but you have to be able to say, okay, how does the game work? How do I play the game? Don't just start showing up to play and you don't know the rules. You're not going to win.
Right.
So business credit's not affected by debt to income, and it's not affected by inquiries. That's the one that people are like, oh, so what if I put all my debt on my credit cards on the business? Yeah, your score would jump. You know what your score is, Eric, when you're not using your credit cards, it's probably in the high 7s. If you used every single one down to $0 available, it's probably a 620. It's the same for all of us, right? Now, that's the similarity. What makes a difference is how often you pay. And this is where people need to also understand. If you pay on the 1st of every month, you are going to be paying with the cycle of every credit card's got the same statement close period. They don't. Every credit card's got their own statement closing period date. Find yours and make that payment before the statement close date. Because if you make the payment on the 27th and the statement closes on the 28th, but you made your payment on the 29th, well, now guess what? You got to wait a whole another 30 days to see the impact.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, absolutely. Great point. So a couple other quick questions. As it relates to the business credit, you'd mentioned that there's 4 different credit bureaus. You'd mentioned one that I'm not familiar with, Innovis, I think it was.
Yes. I speak to this more when a business owner's on the phone with me for the first time. I'll say, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, right? They'll say, yeah,
right.
This is for the guy that he's on the phone with me for the first time and he's saying that he knows everything that I'm talking about. I'm like, you know what an SBSS score is? He's like, yeah, I know what that is. I know exactly what that is. And I get to this point. I'm like, okay, so the 3 credit bureaus? And he'll go, yeah. I'll be like, okay, the 4th one? I'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, Innovis, right? I'll be like, yeah, I make sure. Okay, it's locked. Yeah, definitely locked. Okay, why is it locked? Well, why not? I don't want anybody. Well, it's only used for overseas bank transactions. So I use it more of like a pawn in like a chess game with people. Right. There are 4 credit bureaus. There are 4 personal bureaus. The 4th one, Innovis, is used for overseas bank transactions. So unless you're buying China property or property overseas, freeze that report. the business credit bureaus have Dun & Bradstreet, Equifax Business, Experian Business, and something called the SBFE. The SBFE is the Small Business Financial Exchange. And if you go on Google and look up does the SBA look to the SBFE for an approval, it'll say yes. It's public information. That's where the SBA goes to get you approved, no matter what bank you applied with. Well, what is the SBFE? What are they looking at? They're looking at Dun & Bradstreet and your personal FICO and time in business and everything else. And then that gets combined together to make it SBSS or an E-Trans score. And if you go on Google and look up, again, public information, what is the minimum E-Trans score for the SBA or SBSS score? It'll tell you it's a 140. What is minimum E-Trans score for SBA? It'll tell you it's a 140. Some banks have a higher, it's 155, 175. But the ones that have a higher minimum usually don't require profitability on the tax return, right? So the higher, you're a better borrower on credit, you don't have to be profitable. But we're only going to give you 30% of your top line up to 500,000, right? So there's rules, there's guidelines. I know the rules. So you come to me to play the game, and I'll walk you through the map. Now, what happens is you come to a guy like me, and I say, I'm going to help you play the game. And I go, but I know how to play the game, and you don't know how to play. And I know how to make the most money from by the time we get from here to here. Now, in order for my business to keep thriving and for me to keep these doors open, I need you to keep borrowing. Because if you don't borrow again, how am I going to stay open?
Right.
Think of and I'm talking to the business owners here, think of everybody who's ever called you. They all need you to keep borrowing or their business model dies. Let that sink in.
Yep.
Right? We give you a fractional CFO because we want you to see that in the next 3 months after you're funded, the CFO is going to, yes, he's going to pay for himself. That's not the problem. What I'm saying is you're going to see that you don't need a bank. You need to learn how to become your own bank. And gosh, I have a whiteboard thing. I love whiteboarding stuff. I am dying to use this whiteboard on the wall over here. Dying. I don't have any whiteboard markers, so I'll try my best to explain it verbally.
He's moving into a new office, so
yeah, little all over. We have, let's just say, a wholly paid life insurance policy. You probably all heard of a life insurance policy. It's fully paid, so it's a $100,000 policy or $1 million policy. You got to pay, $120,000 to get it active, and you got to put in whatever it is. After it's all set up, now you have that $1 million policy generating gains against the S&P 500. It's called 10% average annual gains. If you need to borrow money, do you go to the bank if you have this set up? No. You go to this. This is now your bank, but it's my money. That's right. Now you're your own bank. Borrow against that life insurance policy. Now, is that income?
Nope.
No. So you just got a tax benefit out of it too. Yep. Now we start to talk about, okay, well, what am I paying in interest? Most wholly paid life insurance policy vehicles have about a 5 to 7% APR take. But we just said the give was 10%. So what are we really talking about? They're taking your profit from the S&P. They're not taking your money.
Right.
Does it hurt your compound benefit? Of course it does. But does it hurt your pocket more? No, definitely not. Now, what if you do that as a way to borrow to purchase real estate? What if you do that to now do a fix and flip, but you don't fix, flip, and sell, you fix, flip, and hold? Pull out the cash out of the property. Is that income?
Nope.
That wasn't income either.
Right.
So now I just got money again, tax benefit. Now I go do it again and again and again. But wait a minute, when do I get paid? Write a contract from the first house you fixed to yourself that in 2036, this house must be sold to pay you back, and that you are due no payments to the business until then. Now you just got income, no tax, and you're going to pay it back, but it's not coming out of your pocket at that point either. And when you do sell the property, that's a write-off against the loan that you had, which decreased the amount of taxes that you just paid on the property as well. All of these things, it sounds like a lot, but if you just have a CFO that knows what he's talking about, you'll only need one loan. maybe 2, because you got one to build the credit and one to do the refi with the SBA and take it all out. That's it. Anybody trying to give you more than a loan and a line of credit, or 2 loans or 2 lines of credit, is not trying to help you grow. They're just trying to give you money so they can make money from the bank. That's all it is.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great insight. I think that many times, and to your point, the only people out there selling loans on a regular basis are they're always leading with those high interest loans that, and they get the desperate people, right? I'm desperate to cover rent. I'm desperate to pay payroll. You borrow money when you're in that situation, all you're doing is perpetuating the inevitable, which will be, you will likely end up in a bad spot unless you know exactly what you're doing with that money and how you're going to use it.
So let me give you an example to that, because I like that you said that, because there's a reason that products exist, right? People will say, I hate those payday advances.
Right.
Payday advances are terrible. They are. But if you were about to be evicted out of your apartment, and your business that you just started off the ground in the apartment, Amazon business in your apartment, you have nowhere to store the inventory. It's probably worth taking that payday loan so you can keep your space, right? It's situational. So we now go back to this situation that we're in. Let's go through an example. Let's say a business owner says, I'm going to borrow $100,000. I'm going to do it on my personal FICO because it's only $100,000. When I need to borrow $500, I'll do it on my business then. Guess what? When you go to borrow it on your business, then they're going to say you're over leveraged because of the $100,000 that you took on your FICO.
Exactly.
It's never too late to think strategic and think ahead. But what happens is a lot of these cash advance guys, the daily payment people on the phone trying to offer you money, calling you all day, those people do not want to work on your loan for 3-4 weeks.
Right.
Which is what it takes to fund a good loan.
Right.
They want to work on your loan for 24 to 48 hours. And make their money and go to the next client. And they're going to sell you on, well, if you pay this back and do the right thing, we're establishing a relationship. Ask them, does this show on my business credit? It does not. It's a cash advance. It's a purchase of future receivables. So it's a purchase sale contract. So if it doesn't build your business credit, what are you establishing a relationship with?
Right.
One company that you can keep getting expensive money from forever. Right. So you have to think about, well, from your example, person got a cash advance, put him in a bad spot. I had a client come to me that was 6 months behind on his rent in Texas. He had been open 8 months. Sean, do you remember the client that was open 8 months? Can you come here for a sec, Sean? He's coming. Give him a sec. I don't know if you heard me. I don't want to do a whole scream thing. Can you grab Sean? I want to go over the Act Shack story. This is a good one. So guy owns axe throwing business, right? So you heard about these, right? Parties.
Yeah.
And open 8 months. He comes out and he says, Devin, I'm behind 6 months on my rent, and I need to get caught up on the rent. I got to get my food orders in. I got to get tables for the outdoor seating. And I think it was, Sean, what time of the year were we in around with Act Shack? What time was that? April, May?
April.
Yeah. So by August, his rent was paid. He had no payments from the loans affect his cash flow. And then how long did it take him to pay off those loans? 8-9 months, right, Sean?
Yeah.
Right? We do a refi. So what happens is we gave him 120,000 in advances. 140.
It was 150 and change.
150 and change. So again, he's 8 months old with a FICO score of a 660. So you can't qualify for any SBA loans. You can't qualify for anything personal. So he could only get a cash advance. So we gave him a cash advance for 150,000, let's call it. And what I did is I said, okay, you're behind 70,000 to your landlord. You're giving him 70 of that 150. Then 30,000 is going to go to food for the next 2 months. You're going to put that to food. You got 50,000 left over. That money is going to sit in the bank. You're going to pretend it doesn't exist. And now all of your payments on these advances are covered until you started flipping the orders on the food, got more seating on the outdoor seating, you've done everything you have to do. Now we also set him up through Credit Suite, and so that he could buy some things on net 30, net 60, and 90 accounts. But all those things are possible. But what happens is most people call up, say, I'm behind on my rent, I need a cash advance. The guy says, okay, great, here you go, here's your money. And then they hang up the phone and they say, all right, you go do your thing. That business owner now has 150,000 hit their account. They go spend 70,000 to the landlord. They put 30,000 to food. They put 20,000 to tables. Then they call a marketing company or somebody and they try and put $20,000 to invest. You're pumping money into the business is sometimes a fix. I'll admit that, right? As a business owner, sometimes the easiest fix is to just throw money at it. But that's not 50, 60, 70% of the time. It's like 20% of the time you can throw money at it and fix it right. Usually you're going to throw money at it to learn how you should have fixed it, and then you fix it yourself.
Right.
Business owners listening, Mike, Eric's laughing his butt up because he knows that's exactly what happened with him a bunch of times. Right? You say, I'm going to do a marketing thing. I'm going to use MailChimp. You pay for MailChimp, you find out MailChimp stinks. It hits the spam box every time because you're using somebody else's reputation. Then you try and share reputations with somebody else to do marketing. You find out, I got to do my own. And I got to warm up the domain. There are no shortcuts here. Got it. Sometimes there's no shortcut and you can't throw money at the problem. You just have to find the expert that knows what he's doing, how to do it. And I didn't touch on it at all, but if you go to bestcompany.com, they offer, there's a business loans category section. If you go to Ramp by Visa's accountant directory, these sites all list us as number one. And I'm not saying go click the guy that's number one. I'm saying go verify that the guy you're on the phone with is even listed at these places. Right? If he's only got a Google review page and a Trustpilot that takes 5 minutes to set up, that's a red flag. He should be in, and if it's a Bloomberg article or CNN, or not CNN, Bloomberg or Wall Street, whatever it is, those like very buzzwordy article sites that are like, pay $79, we'll get you on the front of the thing.
Right.
Those don't work. There's so many things that business owners know don't work. If we could all just have one message board where we got together and said, this doesn't work, we could save millions.
That's a valid point. And it's funny as you say that because, when I first started with the trucking business, people ask, what are you going to do with the money? Right. When I go to talk to somebody. And for me, right. First of all, there's what you're going to do with the money is important. And then
no, it's not. I'm going to stop you right there, Eric. It's not as important as you think. Is it important? Yes. But if you say working capital, most banks, that's enough. The reason why that guy on the phone was always asking you why you wanted to use the money is because he had a calculator out and he said, all right, how many trucks you got right now? 2? Okay. And about how much money are you doing per month in revenue? 36? Got it. So each truck's making him 18, which means that if I go get him another one, he'll be doing this, which means that this is the additional money he makes every month. So you could afford $600 a day daily payment. That's all they were doing.
That's fair. That's fair.
You can afford based on how you use the money. Now, when is a business owner most open and honest about how they're going to use the money? In the first call. It's called a merchant interview. It's called your opening call. That's where you gather what's called the holy grail. How you sell somebody expensive money and get them to say this is a good deal is you show them, look at all the money you're going to lose if you don't take this expensive money. It's nonsense. Don't fall for it.
Interesting. Yeah. So, as it relates to us in the coaching space, when we're talking to somebody, what we want to identify is they have a good plan for the money. And that's kind of where I was going with that point. But and that's part of the issue, because if they don't have a good plan for the money and you're going to go borrow money at a high interest rate, I made a calculated decision in my trucking business. And what had happened was we didn't have a problem getting financing for trucks. Matter of fact, I bought my first, 8 or 10 trucks, I think it was, on my personal credit. And then I capped out and they're like, yeah, we're not lending you any more money to buy trucks. But what I was able to do was get them to look at my financials and my business plan, and the combination of the two of those are like, oh, you're bringing in $275,000 a month. Yeah, we can loan you more money to buy more trucks. But they wanted, $12,000, $15,000 down per truck. And I'm buying trucks 4 at a time. So I'm like, I got to come out of pocket $60K. But that's where I went back and I looked at the MCAs and I'm like, okay, I can hold that for 60 days. I can manage that for 60 days to get the down payment to get those 4 trucks. Because as soon as those 4 trucks hit the road, I'm bringing revenue in. I got to cover the payroll and the gas and everything like that, the diesel and everything. but I can get it out there and I can make it work as long as that second payment's only for 60 days or 90 days or whatever it is. Once it's off, then it's all free sailing, and now I'm in a good position. And that works fine until there's until the industry slows down for some reason, and then you're like, oh, screwed.
Yeah, the industry slows. That
Yep.
guy was supposed to pay you on a net 45, pays you on a net 60.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Your fuel card you had with Gulf was a $10,000 limit. They knocked it to $6,000. Right? All of these things can happen, and if you're in a position where that is your only option, then that's where you go. But you said you were looking to buy 4 trucks, and if you have 10, again, having somebody like a CFO, this is where a CFO would go, okay, you have how many trucks? 10, and okay, so that means you're doing about what, 200,000 in receivables a month, right? 260 in receivables a month.
We're doing about 275,
something like that.
Yeah.
There's companies out there that will give you a line of credit, 90% of what you're owed. It's called factoring. Now, This is the thing. Factoring for transportation, like the back of the hand. Everybody that pays truckers know that 90% of them use factoring.
Right.
It's all the other industries in the country. All the other business owners that aren't in trucking that are watching this are saying, yeah, but factoring? No way, because they call my client. Because this Dymo owes me money.
Right.
And now the company I just borrowed from is going to call them, and that makes me look like I'm desperate for money. I don't want that. So we found companies that actually, they don't lie. There's no lie, because they actually put in the contract that they're also now going to be a complimentary billing service. So now your factor is not calling, your billing service is calling.
I worked with some of those too.
Right. So there are other ways of getting a factoring agreement in place without you having to let the cat out of the bag. You need money to everybody. You just have to find the right person willing to give it to you. Now, here's the issue. Most people that are on the phone trying to give you money that do factoring only work with 1, 2, 3 factoring places, because they don't do a lot of factoring because there's no money in it. The bank makes 3% on an invoice. What do you think they're paying the broker? Basis points, less than 1%.
Yeah.
And when you're doing 15, 20, $30 million a month in revenue, like in volume, like I am, that makes sense. But for the guy who's, doing $1 million a month, 0.25 bips is not paying his rent.
Right.
And his guys and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because that's the trucking industry is a very expensive industry, very capital intensive. And that was a hard lesson to learn, because when I got into it, I started identifying there's you're already operating on a thin margin, and something that disrupts the industry by 10 or 12% is going to bury somebody who's not disciplined with their cash flow and managing their money. And you've got to have a backup. That's the other thing. And I think that, I learned it in the trucking business. I've seen it in the retail business. I've seen it in a lot of the restaurant business for certain. People that are not getting and don't have a strategy for what to do with the excess funds when they come in, and put that money away for rainy day funds, and then establish and build credit in an effective way so they have it when they need it, really becomes a huge detriment. Because I go through this every time. We've had 4 major market disruptions in the last 20 years. That's every 5 years on average, right? So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And if you're not prepared for it when it hits, and there's no telling when, right? But it's going to happen. And if you don't have the resources and you don't have the credit access to capital to work through a 90-day window or a 180-day window, it might just be that blip. And that's the difference between staying in business and going out of business. And we ran the statistic. It's an SBA statistic. 82% of all businesses that go out of business claim cash flow challenges as their number one reason. That statistic has not changed dramatically in 45 years, Devin.
Yep, that makes sense. And to piggyback on it a little bit, I had a client that got a loan for a regular term loan, but he was saying to me, Devin, I need another $50,000. I said, okay, but you don't need it right now. He goes, no, when I do need it, I'm going to pay it back in 2 months. I'm like, okay, then you don't need a loan or a line of credit or a credit card. I went and linked him up with something called, you guys have heard of Visa, right? The credit card company.
Right.
Ramp by Visa. is a program that Visa owns.
Oh, okay.
Ramp by Visa is a program that it's called Ramp. They don't call it by Visa, but I make sure that I stick the fact that Visa owns that company because it validates that they are a legitimate firm. It's not just a fly-by-night company. What Ramp does is they'll give you 15, 17% of what's in the bank on a 0% net 30, 60, 90 line of credit.
Really?
So if you have 200,000 sitting in the bank and you only need 40 grand, Ramp might give it to you. Now you're thinking, well, who has 200 grand sitting in the account? Well, if you just got a loan, right? So now he's got his loan, he's got his Ramp, he's good to go. I hooked everything up in Ramp so that he can also bill invoices there. The Ramp line of credit, if you get approved for that, you automatically get access to what's called Ramp Bill Pay, which allows you to, let's say, Chris, you're using a company to buy those microphones. Company sends you an invoice for 100 microphones, 10 microphones. You have a round table thing. You say, okay, I don't have 10 grand to pay for these microphones. Ramp, here's this invoice. You mind paying this for me? And they'll do it as long as it's under your line of credit limit over here, because they match it on the bill pay side. So if you have 20,000 available on the line, they'll give you another 20 on bill pay. Now all you do is give them an invoice, select net 30, net 60, net 90. Now you send an invoice that way, and you didn't touch your line. You still got your 20,000 over here. You just did your invoice bill pay over here. Now, why would Ramp be something that no one who's listening to this has probably had somebody over the phone mention to them? Because if somebody's giving you a 0% interest net 30, 60, 90 account, doesn't that mean you're going to need to borrow less? That's not good for that guy. Why would he ever talk to you about this?
Right, exactly. Interesting. How long has Ramp been around? Because I recognized it. I think it was last year they started reaching out to me, trying to get me to do. I think if I remember correctly, it was credit cards for my team. Is what they
do Ramp corporate cards. So let's say you get approved like Notary-.com's largest online notary in the country. They work for companies like Meta, for example. So really big firm, and we're their fractional CFO. That's an example of somebody that literally does exactly what we were just saying. They're in the same. They're doing exactly that. They're going through the steps of, going through business credit building over here and using the funds for the Ramp, and then going through Ramp, and now they have their QuickBooks set up in Ramp. So all her, if they're sending somebody to an apostille event to, work with the Citibanks of the world and everything else, that they can give them a Ramp corporate card to go spend there. But now that I'm hooked up in your Ramp, crazy story, I found one of our employees was stealing from the company. She was buying Uber Eats and hotels while she was away. And how do you find that out as a business owner with 3,000 employees? You're not going to be able to keep track of that. Nope. Well, guess what? We did, because she uploaded a receipt that was not matching the dollar amount for the transaction. So we're able to monitor a lot of this stuff that also probably makes you feel as a business owner like, okay, Devin's got my back. I'm in the boxing ring punching it out all day. When I get back to the corner, Devin's going to let me know where I was swinging wrong, and he's going to let me know where they were swinging that I didn't see.
Right. That's awesome. I love that. So tell us a little bit about maintaining and leveraging business credit for growth. I know we talked a couple of different strategies, but anything in particular for best practice for maintaining your business credit?
After it's established, make sure that you don't have a business address out of a home. That's a big one. You want to have a business address, even if it's virtual, preferably. No virtual, but if it has to be, it has to be. No PO boxes. A business phone line in the business's name. If you have the ability to go and set up accounts with Grainger, Uline, branded apparel, right? Like Office Garner, Mia, very good stuff. Like everything on these tables and forgive me with the Red Bull, like these backpacks and the hats. Yes, it's nice. And we have the employees that are going to get started and they'll have all this stuff. That's all financed on net 30 on branded apparel. Do I need to finance that on a net 30? No. But why wouldn't I? Because it's going to build my credit and I'm buying it anyway.
Right. Yeah, great point. Yeah, excellent.
So you could have used your whiteboard. You could have took us over there and used your whiteboard.
Oh, I don't have any markers, Chris. Why are you doing
that? Damn, my bad.
So you mentioned one of the things on there was your EBITDA. And I think a lot of it's funny because I know we had this conversation early on when one of our first conversations was one of the big problems that I see is that business owners, they get so caught up. I'm going to call some categories out here. It's more of the seasoned business owners. It's definitely the baby boomer, probably some Gen X's, myself included in that group, right? That are very conscious about, I don't want to pay taxes. So I want to write off as much as I can and capitalize on that. And which is fine. That's absolutely a strategy, right? Here's the problem with that. You do that pulls your EBITDA number down, right? That number is I know you have other tools and other resources, but then that makes it harder to get the financing that you want to get when your numbers aren't cool. And I had a client that every year one year they'd lose 10,000, one year they'd make 10,000. Now they're pulling a salary and they got a company car and their insurance and all that's running through the business. So they're living a good lifestyle, but the business is not making a profit. And the issue is they had one line of credit, but they wanted to scale and they wanted to add some company vehicles and stuff like that. Well, they're not getting the financing that they want to get because they're not showing the profits and the banks are looking at that going, yeah, at least you're not getting the premium pricing, premium loans and things like that.
It's the pound of flesh. It's the pound of flesh, right? So and I'm not siding with the big banks here. We're Lendefied. We defy lending. I go against the green. I find the loopholes. That's what we do. It's in the name.
Right.
But to help the business owners listening to this understand, imagine you're a bank and you go to give somebody money. They can't even afford to pay $7,000 of taxes, but they're asking for a $100,000 loan. It's probably a red flag for you to give them money at that point. But if that guy were paying, let's say he was generating $50,000 of profit and he had a 21% flat corporate tax rate, he's ending up, paying, something around $8,500 or whatever it is, or $10,000. At least he's paying $10,000. 10,000 divided by 12 is what? Anyone got the quick calculation? 800 something a month. Yeah. Right. That's a monthly payment on a loan. So if the bank sees that you can afford to pay taxes, they're going to assume you can afford a loan. If you cannot afford to pay taxes, I'm with the bank on this. I don't really think that I would want to give you money either.
Right. And I think that what I really want to illustrate to people in that statement is project out and look at your business and make decisions based on where you want to go 2-3 years from now. Because strategically, if I want to buy a building, I need my financials to look pretty good for the 2 years leading up to buying that building, right? I can't come to you and say, I want to buy a building because maybe depending on the situation, but in many cases, somebody's like, they may have the resources, but because they've been, pulling the money out, trying to reduce the taxes, making it look good right now from a tax perspective, great, I'm not paying taxes, but now I'm not going to get the lending I need to be able to do the things I want to do.
And that's where the EBITDA thing you were talking about comes into play. So if somebody's buying assets, let's say you have a guy in trucking, you buy 4 trucks a year. That's $80,000 of depreciation. Eric, I bet your accountant was doing a 5-year depreciation every time. The truck was getting depreciated over 5 years. Section 179 would have let you take the entire depreciation in year one.
1 year.
Yeah, no, I had a really good accountant.
But what I'm saying is, if you depreciate all the equipment you buy in year one of its purchase, that alone is going to throw a company in trucking usually into a profit.
Yeah. I had a $200,000 tax return that year.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all different businesses, but there's certain ones that have a harder time finding EBITDA because it's not equipment intensive. My business is a perfect example of that. Okay, I go and buy all these desks. Right after all these boxes are unopened and all this stuff goes away, that's my last equipment expense. I'm not going to go buy desks next year. I have desks. Right. So how do I get my EBITDA numbers? Well, I borrow money from the business, and now I pay the business back interest. Interest is a part of EBITDA. There is a loophole for every millionaires stay millionaires. I have that on a t-shirt a client got me. I got to wear it one day. It says millionaires stay millionaires, and there's an arrow and it says because of people like me, call your CFO, I'm your CFO or something. It's really cool. But it's true. Millionaires use these things.
Right.
It's the small to mid-sized business owners that just don't even know they exist.
Exactly. Yep. Appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about future trends. How is AI and other technologies really kind of playing into the lending space, and what kind of impact is it having?
It's increasing the amount of fraud that the banks are thinking they're getting is what's happening.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The banks are thinking that they're receiving 3, 4, 5 times the fraud applications, but really what it is the business owners are putting their their EIN number, right? Because they don't know that their EIN number is the same thing as a tax ID, and the application is asking for an EIN. So they're like, "Oh, it must be my social." The rules and the laws are, and you guys might even agree. Think about some of the laws that we have in this country. They're kind of built for a different era, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly a percentage of them. Yeah.
Lending is no different. The banks of the world expect that business owners are the highest educated. They know what they're doing. There's no reason why they shouldn't have they should have a business and not know what an EIN number is. But guess what? It's 2024. I know plenty of idiots with an EIN number that don't know what it is, but their accountant set it up for them and they did it on LegalZoom. So it took 5 minutes and it's all good. That is exactly it. You having the business and having the things that you need and then applying for the loan and expecting that just because you have an EIN, you're good, or that you have a business address, you're good, or your social, or your credit score is over 700. You need to be able to identify, this is what the bank needs me to be. This is what I am right now. How do I go find those vehicles? How do I get those scores? The reading the directions before you take before you start doing what you're doing. So many people skip reading the directions, and in lending, when running a business, it's very similar. I think that the way AI is changing things right now is people are filling out the app and they're sending it in, and that there's less underwriters now than there were 20 years ago. And so if your app is not spot on, that application, not your financials. Don't worry about your financials, guys, because if you can't get past the application part, they're not going to ask you for your financials. Right? AI is making it so that those who are not, what's the word I'm looking for? That are not anal about the things, that they're not anal about their documents and their taxes and everything is not organized. That is what AI is weeding out. People are saying, oh man, it's so hard to borrow money right now compared to 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah, it is a little bit harder, but it's really just because the banks are expecting you to have a little bit more organization, because back then they couldn't see organization from an online perspective. Now they can.
Right. Great point. It's funny because as a business coach, I see that in all aspects of a business. I sit down with the average business owner, and we've identified what we call the 6 core competencies, and one of those is financial your financial acumen. So we don't say your finances, we say your financial acumen is understanding your finances, right? But that's one of the 6. But what we also recognize is, of those 6, the average business owner only has 1 to maybe 3 as a core competency. The others, the balance of those, are things they have to solve for, and they have to do it through 1 of 3 ways. They partner for it, they hire for it, or they outsource it. So for you offering the fractional CMO or the fractional CFO, that's outsourcing, right? That's outsourcing those needs. Partnering can or may not make sense for some people, and then hiring can or may not make sense for people. But the point is, you have to solve for all 6 of them. You have to have those competencies within your organization somehow, some way. And if you don't, the likelihood of success is pretty minimal. There's few and far between that people are going to get away with not knowing certain things about their business anymore. And the sharper ones, the ones that know how to solve for those solve for those particular challenges within their organization, those are the ones that are going to outrun everybody else. They're going to outpace. I mean, we see it in the PE world all day long. The private equity companies are coming in. They used to not buy below 20 million. Then it was 10. Now it's all the way down to $1 million. If you're doing $1 million in EBITDA, the private equity companies are looking at these companies and saying, you know what? It may not be big enough yet, but what if we take 5 of these companies and we roll them up and we use all our economies of scale that we have, and because we know how to finance, we know how to lead, we know how to do all this, we know how to hire. We pull these pieces together. Now we take that company, we scale it up. Now we get a $10, $20 million company. And then we go and unload that and sell it on a 5 or 6x multiple, right? And the average business owner could do the exact same thing. They just don't understand that they need to solve for some of those things that they don't know. And finance is a big one. Every time, finance is always a big missing catalyst.
It is, but I'll tell you what, Eric, I think that if I could get a business 10 million valuation or $1 million EBITDA profit for a venture company to take them off, nobody listening to this podcast wouldn't be happy to let them take it off. That's a beautiful thing. If you can just get to the point where you're able to provide a living for your family, maybe your generations, right, to come,
Sure.
for your direct generations to come. And the people that helped you get there, the team that surrounded you, if those things are all taken care of and maybe a little bit of gravy on top, 99% of America is happy with that, right? It's just 99% of America is not getting that. They're on a rat wheel.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with these, you look at your average, what we call blue collar service-based businesses. We work with blue and white collar. Those are our two primary focuses. You look at your average HVAC landscaping company, and those are big out here in the West. Plumbing. Anybody's got to stand in the van, truck in the truck kind of reference, right? Yeah, they could scale those businesses up to get to 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 in top line revenue, make a good living for themselves. To your point, right? Make a good multi-six-figure income for themselves. Live well, and the challenge is going to be, and this is what I believe. This is the impact I see technology having in the very near future, and I already see it playing out. That guy who's been able to carve out a really good niche for himself for the last 10 years, but doesn't really know how to do pay-per-click, doesn't understand digital marketing strategy, is going to get beat to the punch by somebody who does, and they're going to get absorbed. And I don't see 30-year companies carving out a lifestyle like we saw over the last 30 or 40 years. I think that those life cycles are going to dramatically reduce, and you're going to see a lot of consolidation, particularly in industries where they're inefficient, and the inefficiencies are going to play out. And that's where the concern. That's what my sole focus is, to help educate that small business owner to solutions like what you guys offer, because people need to know that there is a solution out there that's going to help them. It's going to help them carve out that business and create that scenario. They may have to be the appetite might have to be a little bit bigger, but if it's not, you're really going to have to niche out. I mean, you may not see that as much in the rural communities and things like that, but you're absolutely going to see it in the bigger cities, and the competition's getting more and more fierce in those areas, because there's people that have identified, hey, nobody wants to do this particular skill set, and I know how to do it, and I can leverage others how to do it, and I have the access to the resources to come in and do what we need to do and scale it up. So it'll be interesting. I like I said, we really focus a lot in the service-based industry, and I see that more and more right now. And I left an industry. I left retail, wireless retail specifically. I lived that industry. I was in paging. 25 years. I went from paging to analog to digital technology, wireless technology. And by the time we sold the business in 2017, we sold it at the absolute best peak we could have possibly sold at, because a year and a half later, that same company that we sold, it was a dealer relationship with the carrier. So we had to stay within that space. So the company we sold out to ended up a year and a half later doing a 10% across the board store reduction. Then COVID hit a year after that, and they had to do another 10% across the board store reduction. So this company that acquired us, we were 140 stores. They were 280 at the time they bought us. They got up to about 600 stores. And then a year after COVID, a year and a half after COVID in 2023, did another 10%. So they were up over 600 stores, and that was 10%, 10%, 10%. And next thing you know, they're down to 430 stores or something like that. So all that acquisition, and within a 4-year span of time, 5-year span of time after that acquisition, they're a reduction of the number of stores, and they're doing a fraction of the revenue they were doing, because nobody's buying stuff in stores anymore. They're going online. and you can see, right, those things are playing out. And I think people have to pay attention to those scenarios as well. So A little bit off topic as it relates to credit, but I think that's reflective of AI and the technology and the enhancements. If you're not willing to invest in technology, you're really setting yourself up. So what are some of the other trends that you see emerging in the lending space? What do we have to look forward to? What are some of the things that we really need to focus in on to be able to capitalize?
Business owners have to look forward to people that call you over the phone offering money, getting licensing, and having that be a requirement.
Oh, do you see that happening?
I do, and it should have already. Everybody listening to this, call your senator, let them know you want financing to be something that business financing needs licensure, just like personal lending needs licensure. Business lending does too. And then we'll weed out the bad actors and the daily payment people that don't know what an E-Trans score or an SPSS score is. That's how we fix this.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love it. And I hadn't even really thought about it from that perspective. But to your point, we have real estate licenses. We have all these other, areas where you would think that those people would need to be licensed as well. They should be if they're playing that role that they're playing.
Right. But if it's just a role and you're just playing, I need to figure that out because you're not the guy I want to borrow money from.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we want people working with people like yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Devin, what other things would you share with us? We kind of close out the call today. What are some of the things that maybe we didn't touch on you want to make sure we hit on, or if there's anything else you want to call attention to?
What I would say is I want to say more about to speak to the single business owner. I want to talk to the business owner that doesn't have a team, right? Maybe he's married, his wife's his partner, but wife's got a job too, right? Or if you're a business owner by yourself, you need to get somebody on the phone. Call your most successful friend or family member and ask them to speak to their CPA or accountant. That's what you do. That's the best advice I could give anybody. Single business owners, just find the most successful person you know and ask them to talk to their accountant. And by just getting on the phone with them and saying, hey, I want to do this business, how would you recommend I start? And I'd love to have you be the CPA that sets up my corporation and all that. That's the way to start. That's what I'd say we didn't touch on is how do you get off on the right foot and trust somebody without having to go through a game of guess if, guess that trustworthy person or not, right?
Right.
That's how you do it. Go on Facebook, go to your friends, post something on your thing. That's where you start. And then now grow from there. You don't have to stay with that CPA or accountant. Right. At least you're getting advice from somebody that somebody else who's successful has said is good. Not a Google review from somebody you don't know.
Yeah, great point. And I think there's something else to be said about that, Devin, too, is as you go through that and you kind of hinted towards it, as you build your business, you may outgrow some of the people that you brought in as consultants or whatever the case may be, even as business coaches, right? There's a space that we're comfortable working in. Because we have multiple coaches, we have lots of people that can kind of plug in at different scales. But your accountant, the bookkeeper, that's a great one. We see this all the time. The bookkeeper you started with when you were doing 150, 200,000 a year, probably just about anybody's going to be pretty good at that as long as they understand QuickBooks and how to put the right things in there. I'm not saying everybody, but most everybody. But you go from a couple 100,000 to $500,000 and you have real taxable consequences. Now you need to make sure that the books are being done correctly. Can they put a loan effectively into your books and make sure that it's done correctly? Or are you a loan versus a lease? Those are two different applications in accounting, and it's booked correctly. And if it's not, it's going to mess up your books, right? And so there's simple things like that some of the average bookkeepers wouldn't know the difference or wouldn't know how to do it correctly.
Well, to take it again a step beyond that and put myself in this, I am not too shy to say I am somebody that also gets outgrown quite consistently, I might say, because what happens is I'm going to get your holding company set up. I'm going to show you how the companies underneath should have a parent company. I'm going to make sure that they're all profitable EBITDA-wise. I'm going to make sure that your E-Tran and SPSS scores and your Dun & Bradstreet, all that's done. That took me, probably a lot of hours in the first month, then not a lot, just management after that. But now they open another holding company. They start flipping more houses. Now the guy's got 7 holding companies and 32 homes that he's renting. He's using me for, what, 40 hours a month? It's cheaper. Just go get a CFO.
Right.
And-
right. Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Great.
People outgrow me and have to hire an actual CFO. Which,
Right.
what a proud moment for me. You know how many conversations I've had with a CFO they're bringing in to effectively replace me. Says, Devin, you know what I'd like? I'd like to keep you on the $495 a month just in case I need anything. That happens all the time because if I do a good job, the new guy's going to come in and go, holy cow, this is perfect. And if anything happens along the next year, this guy to have it for $495 a month, if I need him for an hour here or there, it's worth it. Just keep him. That happens all the time. So I might not lose you right away. There's kind of like a slow goodbye period, right? But guess what? Those are the best clients to get me referrals because
Absolutely.
those become my referral partners because now that person has small business owner friends. They're not at the point where they need a CFO to hire and bring on full time. They need to know, how did you get there? How did you get to the point where you could afford $190,000 a year CFO? Well, I started with Devin. Here's his number.
Yep.
That happens a hell of a lot too. And it's I'm a big believer in cosmic karma. It's a big thing for me. If you put good out, good is returned to you. It's just might not be all at once. Forgetting the gentleman that said it. Pretty sure it was Tim Cook from Apple, but it might be somebody else. You can't connect the dots looking forward, right? You can only connect them by looking back and seeing where you've been, how those dots.
It was actually Jobs.
Jobs.
Yeah, it was Steve Jobs in his autobiography. Yeah, great. I love that quote. You absolutely can't. You can't connect them looking forward, but you can when you look backwards, right? Yeah, great point. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Devin. Really appreciate it. We're excited to have a partnership with Lendefied. Certainly, as we continue to grow, we have a few announcements that will be coming up here in the next 30 days or so that will be really intriguing as we look to grow and scale our organization. And we have a goal to get to 100 coaches in the next 12 months. So as we grow and scale, we're looking to really amp up our engagement with yourself as well. But we're excited, and as we kind of look at the different the landscape that's out there, and as it relates to specifically with lending, right? We're looking for the right kind of partners to put our clients in front of, and so we appreciate the partnership. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, for the time. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Devin.
Right.
Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.